is complete. You may sit if you have a chair. I know we never have enough chairs to go around. At 125th anniversary of the founding of this place, it started with a check of $93 to a local farmer and members of the local union to have a place to remember their dead, bury their dead, but also to create the sacred ground so that their story and the story of the men who fought and lived and fought and died was never forgotten. And your presence here today is testimony to the fact that it is remembered, that the story goes on, that the fight continues.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, but we still remember who you are and what you do for us. James Alderson, where are you? James is going to introduce Tim Drake.
Mountain, where the first time in American history that the airport dropped bombs was on striking miners. So why I want to say that about that is I look at these tombstones and they're all Southern and Eastern European names and they're hard to pronounce and they were immigrants and you know in the history books we'll learn that the immigrants built the canals, started building the canals and mined the coal and built the railroads. But what the history books don't tell us is that the immigrants brought collective bargaining to the United States. They fought, they died, they bled for collective bargaining. 125 years later, they are still trying to take collective bargaining away from us. The first thing that Donald Trump administration and his Supreme Court did was the Janus versus AFSCME Council 31 that made every public employee in the United States right to work. That's what we're fighting against. Donald Trump gets up there today in the debate and blames immigrants for the problems in this country. The problems in this country is not immigrants, it's at the very top. There's way too much money at the top. It's not coming down. It hasn't come down in 40 years, and it's not going to come down. That's right. We need to make a difference. We need to get out. We need to tell people what collective bargaining does. Collective bargaining built the middle class. It'll keep the middle class. And by God, I'm going to do everything in my power I can do, work with Cecil Roberts and all of you to make sure collective bargaining is strengthened in this country rather than diminished. With that, thank you very much. I love you all. Thank you. Woo-hoo!
Listen to your mother! Three of my boys, Joseph, Ernst, and Ellis, are lying right over there under that tombstone. They were gunned down with 190 grain, flat nose, 30 bullets. Those bullets were to gun down big game, not men. What led up to their murder? Well, I'm going to tell you, it was big business trying to suppress labor. And this is how it always goes. First, there's an economic depression, and folk are out of work, and they cut wages, and the wages never keep pace with the rising prices. And you know the press is going to say, oh, but if we offer relief, the workers will have no incentive to work. Where have you heard that before? Second, labor's going to start holding marches and strikes, and the press is going to report they're looking to riot and plunder. And third, then the police are going to respond to the fears of the city fathers, and the press will report howling mob of thieves and cutthroats have taken over the city. Protect your women and your children. And fourth, then the federal government's going to respond to pressure from business against labor. And the press is going to report, the union's a terrorist organization. Where are we at in this now? As young'uns at school, bullies called you names and they got away with it if you didn't have someone to stand up for you. Who do we have to protect us?
Union!
The union! When name calling and shaming didn't work, they switched to intimidation and they threaten you. Who do we have to protect us?
Union!
The union! And next those bullies get braver and they're gonna beat you up after school. Who do we have to protect us?
Union!
The union! Well, let me tell you, there's no protection if the principal is the father of those bullies. They are above the law, and there's no protection for any of us then. There won't be a union. President Eisenhower said, only a fool would try to deprive working men and women of the right to join the union of their choice. Remember, these boys over here, the ones with bullets that blasted through their bodies when you go to vote. Bullets going in smaller than a Liberty dime and coming out the size of your dinner plate. That little black oval that you're going to mark on your ballot, that's your bullet hole. That's your bullet hole against the capitalist control. And it will protect the union. This is our chance. This is some of our only chances to protect the union, fighting bravely back for those boys whose bodies lie there. Pray for the dead, but fight like hell for the living. Who was it, Cesar Chavez? Or maybe it was Dorothy Day. Some say Dr. King or Gandhi set them on their way. No matter who your mentors are, it's pretty plain to see. If you've been to jail for justice, you're in good company. Have you been to jail for justice? I want to shake your hand, 'cause sitting in and lying down are ways to take a stand. Have you sung a song for freedom or marched that picket line? Have you been to jail for justice? Then you're a friend of mine. You law-abiding citizens, listen to this song. Laws were made by people, and people can be wrong. Once unions were against the law, but slavery was fine. Women were denied the vote, and children worked the mine. The more you study history, the less you can deny it. A rotten law stays on the books till folks with guts defy it. Have you been to jail for justice? I wanna shake your hand, 'cause sitting in and lying down are ways to take a stand. Have you sung a song for freedom or marched that picket line? Have you been to jail for justice? Then you're a friend of mine. The law's supposed to serve us, and so are the police. When the system fails, it's up to us to speak our piece. It takes eternal vigilance for justice to prevail. So get courage from your convictions, let them haul you off to jail. Have you been to jail for justice? I wanna shake your hand, 'cause sitting in and lying down are ways to take a stand. Have you sung a song for freedom or marched that picket line? Have you been to jail for justice? Will you go to jail for justice? Have you been to jail for justice? Then you're a friend of mine.
What a great honor it is for me to be here today at the Minor Cemetery with all of our brothers and sisters and our Union family. You know, Mother Jones dedicated her life fighting for working families and coal miners all across this country. A genuine hellraiser, feared by corporate America. Our guest speaker today followed in her footsteps. He too dedicated his life standing up and fighting for working families and coal miners all across this country. You know, it was a few years ago that President Cecil Roberts laid out the plan to save the health care and pensions for thousands of our coal miner retirees and widows and dependents. From the courthouses to the State House to the National Capitol, you were there. You followed his lead. There were people that said it couldn't be done, but we did it. You did it. And I want you to think today about the thousands of miles that each and every one of you traveled all across this country following President Cecil Roberts. We went to Washington, D.C. You went to Washington, D.C. You wore those $5 camouflage shirts and you out-lobbied people with $1,500 suits. You made a lasting impression on the people in the United States Congress. You all, under the leadership of President Cecil Roberts, made Congress live up to the promise that they made us in 1946. No other union in this country could have done that but the United Mine Workers of America. And John L. Lewis, when he said we were the shock troops of the labor movement, brothers and sisters, he had it right, because we are the shock troops of the labor movement. And I'm telling you today, we have one of the greatest labor leaders God ever put on the face of this earth with us. And I'm so thankful that he was with us to help us lead in that fight. And what a glorious victory we had at the end of the day. Thank you all for what you all did. Thank you. Thank you. With that, I want you all to make welcome one of the greatest labor leaders in this country today. Your friend, your president, the one and only President Cecil D. Roberts of the United Mine Workers of America.
Thank you, young man.
Can you hear this all right? Well, first of all, Steve got carried away with that introduction. There is absolutely no way that somebody that was born 15 miles up a holler and the blacktop ended and the dirt road started and never went to any place to shop but the company store, born in a company house, could be all what he just said. But I want you to give him a round of applause because he works really hard for you guys. And I'd like to recognize Brother Tim Miller. Tim works equally hard every single day here in the Midwest for you. You've got great representation between the two of them. Tim, what did you get on to, brother? Aren't you proud that the president of the Illinois State AFL-CIO is a United Mine Worker? Give Tim another round of applause. I just wanted to report something to you, if I might. You might not know, we're talking about history here. In the building that houses the AFL-CIO, they have these nice plaques up on the wall of every union leader that made it to the top of the AFL-CIO structure. And do you know what union has the most plaques up on that wall, even though we're not quite as large as we were one day? The United Mine Workers of America. Let me tell you one of the things that I raised not long ago at a meeting of the AFL-CIO Executive Council, which I'm a part of. And I looked up at the front, and we now have a president of the AFL-CIO for the very first time ever that happens to be a woman. Then I look around that executive council of about 55 of us sitting there, and half of that executive council is either a woman or a person of color. That represents the working people of this country. Mother Jones was indeed a United Mine Worker. If you're getting paid to go across this country by the United Mine Workers, you are a United Mine Worker. And the greatest labor leader, in my estimation, of all time, is not one of those people up there on the wall. It's Mother Jones. Yeah. And she doesn't have a plaque. Not that I'd be one to rock the boat, but I suggested in that council meeting, why can't we put Mother Jones up there on the wall with everybody else that was a great leader nationally, internationally? No name is more well known than Mother Jones. See, Tim talked about, not Tim, but Steve talked about me. I'm talking about everybody else. I happened to see Bill Brunfield walking in here, a former international board member. It's great to see Bill. But I want to talk about others here. If you are a local union leader, I've got a list of all the locals, but I've been around a while. And I know I'd miss somebody, so I'm not going to introduce anybody. I'm just going to ask all the local officers from all the UMWA locals that are here to stand up and be recognized. See, that's how I got to stick around. I know a little bit about politics. Thank you. By the way, this union couldn't operate a minute without our local union leaders. Now, I'm going to ask another group to stand up. None of us could be here today. None of us could be here today doing what we're doing right now. Freedom of assembly. That's what we're doing. I'm exercising the right of free speech. That's what I'm doing. Hopefully we'll continue to have the right to vote. If we vote right, as Tim said. Now, I know veterans are kind of shy about this. I'm also president of the Union Vets Council at the AFL-CIO. Do you know there's about 1 million union veterans in this country? Not long ago, asked me to speak at their convention to train their people how to speak to veterans. Well, that's not hard. Ask your dad, your grandfather, your uncle, your brother, sometimes your son, and sometimes your daughter. If you are a veteran, would you please stand up and remain standing for a moment and give them a round of applause as they stand? Don't sit down, I know you want to. We kind of miss this point. Remain standing. I do this everywhere because it's important. If you're here today and somebody in your family is serving right now, your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, your grandchild, anybody in your family serving now, stand up and remain standing. I know there's some in here, they just don't. I see you right there. I know it's a little hard for some of us to get up. Don't feel bad, I'm in your category. Now, this is going to get most of you. If anybody in your family, your dad, your grandfather, anybody in your family ever served in the military, would you please stand up? And remain standing for 5 seconds here. If you don't remember a thing that happened here today, I ask you to just look around. There is no other place that you can go other than the coal fields and the rural areas of this country and find more patriotic people than we are. So the only thing I ask you to do, when you hear some rich person, some CEO, some chairman of the board talk about the patriotism of their company or the patriotism of their board, understand something. Forgive me for what I'm about to say, but that's pure bullshit. That's what that is. You are the patriots in this country. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your sacrifice. And God bless every single one of you. Please be seated. But let me say something to you. I am so proud of those retirees that were mentioned a moment ago. It is true that beginning in 2012 and ending perhaps never, there's been over 60 bankruptcies. I want you to understand what bankruptcy law entails. The CEO that ran the company in the ground goes to a judge and files bankruptcy on behalf of his corporation. He gives the judge a list of people that are really important to that company and asks the judge to give them a raise. Now, remember, they just bankrupt this company. The judge says, yes, we can't afford to lose these people. The next thing they do is say, we can't afford to pay these miners what we've been paying. Well, I see that. Just got their wages. That happens. We can't pay for their pensions any longer. Even though they earned them, Your Honor, this company can't afford this anymore. All right, do away with that. The worst one, though, and everyone here knows this. Every one of you knows somebody that was on the verge of death, either from black lung or some other illness, when all this started. And that judge said, cut their health care off. And guess who got handed that bill? The United Mine Workers. And all of our members are looking at me and saying, what are you going to do about this? And the answer to that was, I don't know. But we will not give up our pensions or our health care we've earned without a fight. Yeah.
That's right.
The biggest abuser of this was Peabody and Arch and Patriot. All of them conveniently located in St. Louis. We started getting on buses, and people here rode those buses. I see bus captains out there. I see people who took charge of their communities. And we went to St. Louis over and over and over again. And just like Mother Jones would have had us do, we got a little bit militant. And at the end of every rally, when I finished speaking, somebody went to jail. Either 8, 9, 20, whatever we felt needed to be done. And people say, why would you go to jail? You can make all the speeches you want. Nobody cares. But when you go to jail, every newspaper in every state and all around the world writes about it. You just went to jail for a few hours, and that made every newspaper. And eventually, Peabody yielded. And they said, we've got money for you if you'll just stop coming here. And I'll tell you how desperate they were to get rid of us. How desperate they were to get rid of us. We've got people here today, and Harry Higginson's one of them. We left them there to picket. Well, these negotiations with Peabody was going, and we signed an agreement with Peabody for millions and millions of dollars to provide health care to 22,600 people. Peabody's general counsel called our general counsel. We had 6, what you think, 6 retirees, 70 or older, walking around our building. And they said, if you'll get rid of them by 6 o'clock, we've got another $10 million for you. Don't tell me the blood of Mother Jones and John L. Lewis and all those great leaders don't flow through your veins. I know it does. Then, you see those shirts that Steve talked about? When you buy them in bulk, they probably come to about $6 each. But I spoke to a United States Senator on Friday night a week ago. He's campaigning again in Virginia, Tim Kaine. He don't mind me saying this. He said the general consensus, so think about this, of the Senate was that we were the most effective lobbyists coming to Capitol Hill and never been there before. And Tim was a little kind when he said they were wearing $1,500 suits on the other side. That's from Target. These people wear $10,000 suits and live on K Street. At the end of the day, the leader of the United States Senate, Mitch McConnell, who have been against us for 10 years on this, changed his mind. Then in December of 2019, the entire United States Congress passed legislation that provided guaranteed health care for our retirees until they die. And in addition to that, millions and millions of dollars has been made available to make sure you get your pension to the day you die. And the next time somebody says, oh, you guys are too small, you don't do anything anymore, you tell them this. $1.5 billion, with a B, billion dollars flows into the United States coal fields every year for what these pensioners did in fighting and standing up, just like Mother Jones and these warriors from Verdin when they stood up and risked their lives for us. And I'm going to ask all of our members who are here today, who rode those buses, went to the rallies, went up on Capitol Hill and lobbied, because they indeed have the blood of Mother Jones in their veins. Stand up. want you to understand this is the day. This is what's happened in the last few years. But now let's go back a little bit. In 1902, short time after this, supported the United Mine Workers. Her husband Timothy supported the United Mine Workers. Do you know what they got for that? The Baldwin Phelps thugs came to their company house, went into their house, and put everything they owned out in the road. Even took the dinner they were about to eat off the stove and threw it out in the yard. One of Mother Blizzard's daughters said they even took the taters and threw it out in the street. Now that's a young kid watching this. Nobody should experience that. But I want you to understand something. That happened thousands and thousands of times whenever the union was being formed. And if you went on strike, understand something. You were not only unemployed, you were homeless. So when you struck, they kicked you out of the house. When you supported the union, they kicked you out of the house. But they had to pay a price for what they did to my great-grandfather and great-grandmother. Remember, their last name is Blizzard. That was my mother's grandparents. 10 years later, Cabin Creek, Peg Creek, just a mountain separating them, went on straight. What happened? Evicted them all. They had no place to go, but my great-grandmother had their own property. She had a restaurant in Estill. That's the only place on that 15-mile road that was not owned by the coal companies. So put your tents on my property. Put your tents on my property. Mother Jones got wind of this, and to Cabin Creek she went. 1912.
Bro.
She looked around, and they wouldn't let her walk on the road, please. The coal companies owned the road, so get in the creek if you want to walk. Wow. Mother Jones got in the creek and walked to my great-grandmother's house and collaborated with her. I understand now you got two mad, angry, militant, radical women.
Don't mess with him.
Some of you are saying, well, I'm married to one of them. Mother Jones looked this over. They had machine guns mounted where they couldn't get on the property and get shot. They brought in scabs, and Mother Jones called for a rally. And 6,000 people came to that rally. That's not too bad, but they had 6,000 people on strike. Hand loading days, remember that. This is what she said. You men ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You're a bunch of cowards. Letting those scabs take your job. You ought to go and operate the cooking. Watch the kids and let the women run this straight. Talk about chastising somebody. Then she said this. Not advocating this today, by the way. Go up Cabin Creek. Go up Peg Creek and arm yourself. And you kill every one of them son of a bitches. You burn their tipples. And you'll win this strike. Guess what? That is exactly what the miners did when they left there. The Peg Creek, Cabin Creek strike turned into the Peg Creek and Cabin Creek mine wars. And guess whose side the federal government was on? It wasn't ours. The state didn't support us. The state sympathized with the coal companies. Sound familiar? The federal government supported the coal companies. Martial law was declared. The strike ended. That was 12 and 13. In 2014, the UMWA called a strike in Colorado ever heard of the Ludlow Massacre, but that's the worst mark on this country in this history of labor relations. They were owned, those mines and steel mills were owned by John Rockefeller. All of the strikers, by the way, were immigrants. The Journal of the UMWA was printed in 25 languages. Can you imagine if I was up here and we had 25 interpreters? You can't understand West Virginia accent as it is. Oh, I know, I get it. But they came out on strike because they were tired of dying in those coal mines. The most dangerous mines in America, owned by John Rockefeller, the richest man in this country. And when they struck, his staff came to him and said, Mr. Rockefeller, I believe those miners are willing to die for what they believe. And that was true. Do you know what Rockefeller's response to that was? Well, if they're willing to die for what they believe, I'm willing to kill them for what I believe. Now I want you to think about this. The Baldwin-Felt thugs made their way to Colorado. Mother Jones was hot on her heels. She had gotten out of jail in West Virginia. She almost died of pneumonia in the jail. And now she's on a train going to Colorado. I get tired flying on a plane. But the Baldwin-Felt thugs took their machine gun from Cabin Creek and Paint Creek with them, mounted it up on top of the hill. Ludlow was a Greek colony. Louis Tikas was the head of that colony. There's a big monument in Trinidad. If you ever get to Colorado, go to Trinidad, then go to Ludlow. There's a huge monument to this in Ludlow and in Trinidad. The Greek government paid for that Louis Tikas monument. We paid for the one at Ludlow. It wasn't enough. They kept shooting into these tents. A 12-year-old boy stood up and they cut him in two with that machine gun in the middle of the day. Oh, we think we've had it hard, right? We think it's tough to strike, and it is. But we had it nothing like they had it. But that wasn't even enough. They walked off that hill with kerosene and poured it on the tents. And they burned 13 women and children alive. Babies, mothers, burned alive. They dug a cellar so they wouldn't get shot with machine guns. They were trapped in that same cellar when the fire started. The strike ended there, except they drove those scabs out of Colorado. The Union didn't win, though. Mother Jones, I'm leaving you with this one. Mother Jones gathered everybody together, thousands of people, the strikers, their wives, their kids, their babies, their neighbors, their friends, their aunts, their uncles, their grandparents. All they wanted was the American dream. Pay us fairly, treat us fairly. Don't kill us in these coal mines. Is that too much to ask? State government against them again, federal government against them again. Mother Jones looked out on the crowd and she studied, and these people have been burying babies and children, women, 12-year-old kids, coal miners. By the way, they killed Louis Tikas in the middle of the day. Hit him in the head, butt of a rifle, shot him 3 times, and nothing happened to any of them. Imagine Mother Jones looking at this crowd. And this is what she said. Sure you lost. Pause. Sure you lost. Pause. But they had bayonets. And all you had was the Constitution of the United States. And let me assure you that any contest between bayonets and the Constitution, the bayonets will win every time. But, you must fight. You must fight and win. You must fight and lose. But beyond all else, you must fight. And you must fight. You must fight. You must fight. God bless all of you.
Okay? In every coal mine in Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, and Pennsylvania had the same ton weight and the same pay. Chicago Verdin Coal Company is the largest coal company in the state of Illinois. They decided they'd be the first union busters in the state of Illinois, or they thought. They threw out the miners, they locked them out, they built up a stockade around the mine. Being the way coal barons are, they decided to use racial divide, and they decided to go look for miners out of Alabama. If you walk a lot of coal field lands, you'll understand this. I've been privileged to walk a lot of West Virginia, and you'll see there's camps from every different nationality. Cecil's familiar with this, I'm very sure. They kept it segregated. Now, on this day in October, when we all went up there, because I led these men from Mount Olive area, and there was men from the surrounding community, and not only did men, but there was women and children and wives and kids, man. They didn't know what their fate was going to be. They didn't know if they were going to live or die, but they marched. Just like Cecil was talking about the March of Blair Mountain, they marched because they had enough of the oppression. They finally were at a point where they're standing up for their own dignity. From Chicago, the first newspaper is up in our museum. And the one thing United Mine Workers did back in 1898 that I am so proud of is they taught everyone in the United States of America to say, "Kiss my ass," and I never thought I'd say that before this man.
A newspaper from 1898.
Solidarity forever, solidarity forever, for the union makes us strong.
Working man. Oh, Lord have mercy on the working man.
Waiting my time for the
you.